Alright, so I sent that Metabo gun back, and I went down to Home Depot, and I decided to try one of these Porter cable guns. I had a 10% off coupon, so the price wasn't that bad. And you can see I've got 4 20-year-old plus Porter cable guns I've been using, and they put a ton of nails, and I've never had a problem with any one of them. So I figured I might as well go back to that brand and just see how this works out for me. While I was at Home Depot, I walked over by the clamps, and my wife was with me, and she looked at me and said, you can never have enough clamps. And I took that to mean, well, why don't you buy a couple more packs? And they still had those 4 packs. They had 2 left, and I got them at 10% off, so I got them for $18, and now my clamp rack is full, so I guess I do have enough clamps now. But, here it is. It came in a case. It's similar to the that Metabo one. The case actually has a little one of those tie wraps on it that has to be cut open. So everything is sealed good in the store, so nothing, can fall out or anything, I guess, or be stolen. So the case it looks a little bit smaller than the Metabo one, and it's got a nice spot to put your paperwork in. Looks like about the same safety glasses come with it. It did have a box of nails that I really didn't expect to be in there, but it was a nice pack of inch nails, so that's probably about a $10 value actually about $12 compared to what I paid for those Metabo ones. So that brings us right down into the exact same price as the Metabo gun with the 10% discount I got. And I noticed right off that it's bigger, a lot bigger than the Metabo gun, but it does have a different trigger on it. It does also have the little rubber cap on it for the marring. That's pretty much what it looks like. The load feature on it, that little button, actually works a lot easier than the Metabo. And I didn't realize at all, but this one here is oil free. You never have to oil it. It must have some kind of a coating in there that eliminates oiling. So I set my compressor at 90 psi to start. Because that's usually where my old Harbor Freight gun would put in the 1-inch pins at. And then I decided there's this little belt clip. Actually, you can turn it from side to side or take it off, and I just decided to remove that because I don't really have any use for it in my shop. It's not like I'm going to be out in the field with this hanging off my belt. So I just pulled that off, and you can see it's got the little Allen key that locks right in there, just like the Metabo one did. And, basically I decided I'd start out trying the 1-inch nails there that came with the gun. So I'm just going to load them in, and it loads exactly like the other one did, and it's a little bit smoother operating when you slide it in and it locks. You don't have to push as hard. And it comes with an air coupling on it, same air coupling as I use for everything else. So that plugged right in. And it's definitely, slightly a little bit heavier than the other one. And it's got a little bit less kick to it, it feels like. But 90 psi, those 1-inch pins in that's at Rock Maple. They stuck out just a little bit there. So I went over and I actually cranked it up to about 95 psi there, and put a couple of them in, and I noticed they were just all coming out exactly flush with it. So I went over and cranked it up to 100 psi this time, and there you can see the ones they were going in nice all evenly, but they were just going in flush. They weren't set. So once I got it up to 100, actually I started to see that they were all going inconsistent, and they were all setting. And I took that little plastic cap off just to see what happened, and that set them a little deeper without the cap, but it actually marked the wood. And with the cap on, you have to how deep they're set depends on how hard you push down to compress that little rubber thing. So it does take a little bit of downforce to get them set really nice, but I tell you, every single one of these is totally consistent in the depth that it goes to, and it's all controlled. They say the depth is controlled by the pressure on the gun. So those 1-inch pins did take 100 psi. With the Metabo gun, wouldn't put them in consistent at 110. So this looks good. And then I had a nice piece of cherry sitting there. I was gonna, just see what that looked like. And again, it's gonna take a little getting used to. It's a whole different trigger lock than that other gun. I like this one a lot better. But everything is, so far, everything's going in really nice and consistent. No pins sticking up and no big holes left when you're done. And I just figured I'd, try a little piece of softer pressure-treated wood there. And it's going to take me some time to get used to this trigger lock, but I definitely like this one better than the that one that swang all the way around on the other gun. And there you can see they went in perfect on the pressure-treated. So I got a piece of ash, and this is just what everything that I tried the Metabo one on. And again, it's, as long as I kept the pressure the same on it, when I pushed down to pull the trigger, everything came out perfectly set and, all set at the same depth. I figured I'd try a piece of plywood that's actually got a pretty soft surface on it, and didn't have to push that hard on it. And it did a good job without, any real damage to the surface there. And then just trying to put a little cherry strip on there just to, see how it works on that. And they all looked really good. I'm just grabbing a piece of sandpaper here to show you because, that's how what you really see. You can see there's not a lot of pull-out force on them, but so I just hit it with a piece of sandpaper, and you can see there's basically the little pinholes disappear. So this gun is doing a much better job at consistently making a little tiny pinhole in it. So when I bought the gun, I actually bought a thing of the Porter cable 1.25" pins to try too, because that's why I wanted to go with a larger gun than the Harbor Freight one, because this will take up to 1 3/8. And again, they look like the rest of the pins. They're 1.25" long, and they have the little arrow on them that you always put down, face that down towards the exit of the gun. And no problem loading them. You just drop them in, push them forward, nothing to change on the settings. And decided to, just try. This is that same piece of maple that I used with the other gun that I couldn't get the 1-inch pins in right with the other gun at 110 psi. And here I am with the, the 1.25" pins, and they're going in really nice. I can't believe, pretty much how nice they're all consistently. I didn't really expect this with these longer pins. So I'm going to say that, it's really a much better gun than the other one was. It's much more consistent. And I'm not getting any of those bigger holes like we got with the other one. So there you can see, you just tap it with sandpaper, and basically the holes are so small that they disappear. I'm just going to take a little tiny strip of cherry there and just try to put it on, and I turned it up on the thin edge there, and actually I slipped off at the first one trying to push it down, so you do have to be careful. Still have to get used to which finger I want to use on that safety there. It seems to work a little bit easier when I have my index finger out front of the gun. It's easier to get the pressure the same and everything. But, actually every one of them went in perfect. Nothing protruding, everything just set the way it should be. So I was really I'm really impressed with the how good this one works over the other one. So I'll take those 1.25" pins out now, and I had bought some of the Metabo 5/8 galvanized pins, and this gun's supposed to go down to 5/8 too, so I'm gonna try them in here to make sure it'll work with any type of pin that I buy. Because I keep hearing, people say, oh, you have to buy, these expensive pins or something else. And I just want to make sure that it'll work with all the ones that I'm used to working with. Now there's a 5/8 galvanized pins in there, and I guess these are good for outdoor projects, being galvanized. And I actually cranked the pressure back down to 70 psi before I did this, expecting it to require a lot less pressure. But here you can see I'm putting them in hard maple, and they're actually just coming out flush. You can still see the heads on them when you sand it a little bit. So I wound up having to turn the pressure up to 80 psi. There, I went over and turned it up a little bit to try it again. And once it was at 80, everything's fine again. So in the instructions in this book, they tell you that depending on your material and the length of pin that you're using, you adjust the input pressure to control the depth that it's set there. So it really does work pretty good, and each material could use to be fine-tuned a little bit, I think, but it looks like 80 will work good with these 5/8 pins on the, this is that real hard maple that I've got. So it's just going to take a little bit of getting used to, but really it's just like a day-night difference between that other gun that I tried. And it's just, just have to get used to the pressure on the tip. That's going to be what takes me a while. But I'm pretty amazed how nice those 1¼ pins go in. Because that's really a hard piece of maple that I got there. It's the worst case that I'll use it on. And I mean, as you saw in with that other gun, I always wound up with like kind of bigger divots if you got them countersunk. And here, the pins go in and hit it with sandpaper a little bit, you can make it disappear. And if you actually put a drop of water on there, it'll swell and really disappear. So the little 5/8 pins work good in it. And there's also a feature on this where when you get down to only a couple pins left, it will not fire. So that's a really good thing, so you're not dry firing it. And then I decided I'll go back and I'll try some of the Harbor Freight pins, which I've used them for years with no problems with the other gun. So these are the 3/4 inch pins. And they fit right in the gun, no adjustment or anything. And I decided to try them in the this hard maple first again, and at first I had the gun set I left it at the 80 psi, and you can see they weren't quite set far enough. You can still see the when you hit them with the sandpaper a little bit, you can see the shiny top of them. But they still were perfectly consistent and flat, which is the good thing. So actually, I wound up turning it up to 90 psi again, and that's when everything started, being set properly and stuff. And you can see there that one of them actually blew out the side. This is like something that can happen very easily with these pin nails. They'll follow the green if they get caught in it. There you can see they were just a little bit shallow, but they did come out the side there. So I turned it up a little bit, and I got a much better results. And that's how they do follow the green. And you can see the one right after the next followed that green pattern when you get caught in it. So nothing you can do about that. That's not the gun's fault. Okay, let's go back to the 1¼ pins, because these are the ones that really excite me. And I got out a piece of poplar this was cut in my backyard also. It's a very super soft wood. It's I think it's actually softer than pine, even though it's considered to be a hardwood. So I figured I'd I try this with the 1.25" pins on the poplar here and just see exactly what happened. And I ran the first ones and I didn't turn the pressure up again, and they just pretty much came out flush in there. But I did see some little marring on the wood. You can see where the softwood, the tip did mar when I tried pushing it down. So actually I went over and I turned the pressure back up to the 100 and went back and did a couple more, and these actually set nice and everything else. But when I was trying to push down to keep them all consistent there, you'll see in a second that the poplar actually did get a dent in it. So with softwood, it's still going to be a problem trying to put these big nails in. But if you do get those dents, you can always just put a drop of water on them and go back and sand them later, and they'll come out. But there you can see there's like some divots where the tip of the gun hit when I pushed hard to set those big pins. But in the, when you go back into the hardwood, you don't get any of that. So, there's always, it looks like there's always going to be a problem in using this for softwood. And I'll have to play with the pressures and stuff just to, see if I can eliminate that a little bit more. But there's another one that blew out the edge there. You can see went right around, but it's set perfectly and driven in perfectly. So I'm happy with it so far. It's definitely bigger than the Harbor Freight gun, so it's going to be limited to the tight spaces it can get into. It's a little bit taller, longer, and the actual head of it's a little bit fatter around there. You can see. But I guess you need that to have the extra power for the longer pins. So I'll get used to it, and it's a little bit heavier than the other Metabo one, but it feels good in my hand, so I'm happy. So this one looks like it's definitely going to be a keeper. The only thing is, like I said, it's a little bit of denting in the softwood, but it's just going to be a matter of getting the exact pressures and everything needed, and working on how much pressure you need on the tip also to set it. So that's all going to be operator determined, but it really did a good job at consistency with everything. And then I just decided, if I'm having trouble with softwood, let me try some walnut, which actually is fairly soft too. And I've got these big 1.25" pins. So this is about the worst case scenario with it. I just wanted to see what it did to the walnut, and there you can see the pins all went in perfect, but the just little tiny pinholes. But there is a slight divot right next to each pinhole. It's really not that deep. It looks like it'll be pretty easy to sand out. So let me just grab it, hit it with a piece of sandpaper quick. So I don't think you'd want to be, using this on any kind of a soft molding that's pre-finished or anything, because, you definitely get a mark. But there you can see it comes right out with a couple hits of the sandpaper, on the raw wood, and just leaves a real nice little, almost, you can't really see the hole. So I guess this is going to join the rest of the Porter Cable guns. The only thing I don't like is they painted it a different color than the older ones, but nothing I can do about that. Case really only has room for that one pack of nails that came with it, and there's really no room to store any additional nails, so that's not really a problem. I'll just get a little case for them all to go alongside it. But it is a nice well-made case, and looks like it'll stand up to some abuse, so I think it'll last. The one last thing I figured I'd play with, if you ever get a pin jammed in there or anything, I wanted to see just how hard it was to take this gun apart and get it out. And the other guns all required removing the screws, but it looks like they put some nice keyhole slots in this little front cover. And actually the cover index is nice up against the top there, so you just have to loosen those screws and it pops right off of there. No hardware to lose or anything else, and I think that's gonna be good if there's ever a jam, but I doubt there'll be any unless something really goes wrong with it. And then everything just slips right back together, and you just have to give it a half turn and tighten it up, and you're good to go. The only thing I'll probably do is I'll probably look for a couple more of these little plastic tips to go on there. I have to get a little bit used to getting that key back in there, but it's a little bit easier than the one on the Metabo that I fought with. It's a little bit looser, and it should work in over time. But I want to pick up a couple of these little tips extra just in case I knock them off and lose them like I do on my other guns. And I just pulled this other nailer out of the drawer that I had in there to show you how these little hammer type ones work. And I'll say that these things definitely are not worth the money that they charge for them. I bought this for a tight job once to use once, and paid about $10 for it. And I'd rather use a screw with a right angle driver. So in the end, this is the one that's gonna stay in my shop now, and you'll see it used over time, and we'll see how it works and how it stands up. But so far it looks so good. Now that this is out of the way, I can finish up the seed video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.